cloud. Okay. So from there, Pamela, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you want to do today? And I think we will set you as our, I forgot the word,
The spotlight.
spotlighting, which I'm not
I can
seeing.
do that.
Why don't
I
you
got
go
it.
ahead? Yeah, there we are. Okay.
Right? Okay.
Yes, and
Yeah.
oh, and lastly, I'll just say the group is getting big enough now that I think we'll keep everybody's microphones muted. Feel free to type questions into the chat box, and I will try to find a time to bring them to Pamela's attention. Watching the chat box very closely while she's demoing. But we can also unmute and ask questions towards the end, or we'll see how this goes. It might be an organic thing. So, okay, welcome, Pamela.
Thank you, Stacy. And thanks everyone for showing up. I'm gonna adjust my light a little bit. It looks, I don't know, not quite right. Um,
Ah,
it may be a little better
yeah,
like
that was.
that. Okay. Okay, so first I have this little room where I live that is now my studio space. Up until about 5 months ago, I had different stations spread throughout my house. So now it's consolidated in one space, and I'm so excited and so grateful to have this. So I'm going to pick up my laptop and just kind of show you the space. It might be a little clunky and awkward, but this is the technology that I'm working with right now. So hopefully I won't make you dizzy. At least I'm not putting my laptop on a pottery wheel like Mike did last week. That was scary. Okay, so this is my workbench where I'm sitting. This is my solder station here. I have a window with a little fan unit, which I can reverse the airflow so that ventilates my space, which is why I have my solder station right here. Um, and then I have uh, my all my hand tools and little accessories and the boxes that Terry recognized, my sweet little IKEA boxes. Up above, hanging here, um, so tall, is my flexible shaft, which a lot of people are more familiar with a Dremel tool, which is similar. It's a rotary tool. This is a little more powerful. And I think there's a little more control. I don't know. I haven't used a Dremel. This is the standard for Metalsmiths. And this is the first big piece of equipment I bought right after taking my first metalsmithing class. And it's what I recommend for people starting their home studio. That should be your first or first piece of equipment because it's so versatile. You can finish pieces, you can drill, you can do all kinds of things with it. So here on the wall, I have my bench brush, which I made in an Arbutus class with Frances Fong. And that's what I use to sweep the metal dust, all the other, the mess I make on my workbench. And I also have my saw frames, some measuring tools. And then behind me here is a drill press that actually Frances Fong gave to me as well. So that was very nice. His mom was getting rid of it and he didn't need it. And I was the lucky recipient. So now I have a drill press. I also have this buffing machine, which I brought home from Arbutus. Someone donated it and I brought it home to test it out. And it actually doesn't work. The motor is too weak to actually continue running when you put a piece up to it to buff it. So I'm at some point when I have time, I was going to look into what it needs. It might just need a new belt or something like that, but I just haven't had time to troubleshoot that. But anyway, it's just fun to have this equipment around. And I have this manual rolling mill right here. It's a really nice Durston rolling mill, and you can thin out metal with this and you can texture it. That is not mine. That belongs to Julia Hynexius, but she doesn't have her studio space set up, so I'm keeping it safe for her in the meantime. Lucky me. Okay, so other things you can't see. Well, I can quickly turn around. This is, I need to get a better setup, but one of the things that's really nice about having this space is being able to put all my wire out where I can see it. It's so much more helpful for inventory purposes, and I do a lot of production work. So it's really important for me to keep track of how much I have of different gauges of wire, so I'm able to continue to make the designs that I sell a lot of. So that's my studio. And what I am going to demo today is a bezel setting of a rose cut stone. And I have a few pieces staged out here because this process takes a few hours and we have an hour. So I've used the magic of TV trick, right? Where I've just prepped a few pieces so I can show you what it looks like afterwards. Because one of the things you have to do in between soldering or heating metal is you have to clean it in a pickle solution. That solution is in my bathroom where I have a window and ventilation and a sink. So that's my pickle pot. That's what you call a pickle pot. And it's, I use a chemical solution these days, which is a bit more aggressive than, you can use a natural pickle, which I used to use just salt and vinegar, and that works just fine. But if you work a lot with brass, which I do, you get copper flashing on the brass, and it's so extremely difficult to sand off. So you can just put it in a chemical solution. It's called Magic Pickle, which is the pickle solution, the chemical one, and hydrogen peroxide, equal amounts of those. And it just magically removes that copper flashing. And you don't have to spend like all that time sanding it, and which gets really exhausting. So anyway, before I get started on the demo, so I was talking to Stacy and just showing her how it's hard to, if I hold up a little piece of jewelry to this camera, right, you can't really see it. So I just put together a few slides so that you can see what I'm going to do, what it looks like, because as I'm holding it up to you through this, you're not going to get a good picture of what it is. So I'm just going to start off with that, and then I'll actually do some metal smithing for you. So I'm going to share my screen. Just give me a moment here. Okay, did that work? Yeah, great. So these are some different styles of bands that I've been doing with the bezel setting. And I've been using these rose cut gemstones because I really like the way they catch the light. And I actually started, I wasn't doing many rings, but someone asked me to design their wedding ring. And so I figured I should start experimenting in silver before I attempt anything in gold. So I know what the design is. I know how to efficiently work in it because I'm sure you all know how ridiculously expensive gold is. And so I want to make all my mistakes in silver before I go on to gold. So these are some of the styles I've done, and an array of the gems that I have. This is a newer style that I've done. I keep expanding the variety of bands I'm doing. I actually recently made this one for my mom for Mother's Day. So, and that's an aquamarine stone there. This is actually the first stone I set, and I think this is Dos Cabezas turquoise. I got it at a gem show in Eugene a few years ago. The corners aren't great. I've learned a lot since then, and I, of course, started with a more difficult stone to set as my first stone setting. Round stones are much easier than square, but I'm always drawn to the irregular shape, so I just had to do that one as my first stone setting. And this is just to show you a variety of the work I do. When I'm doing stone setting, it's usually a one-off piece, like a one-of-a-kind piece or a custom request. Most of the rings I've been making, people have asked me to custom make a ring. But I do a lot of other stuff. And I think that is everything I was going to show you. And so I will get started with some metal smithing. So let me see if I can figure out how to unshare my screen. There we go. Okay. Let me get set up here so you can see what my hands are doing. And feel free to let me know if the view needs to be adjusted at all as I go along. I'm mainly going to be working right in here, so that looks good. Does everyone think that looks okay? Great. First off, I'm going to put my safety glasses on. And just so you all know, I'm working with fire, so I'm wearing natural fibers. You don't want to wear synthetic fibers when you're working with fire because they will melt into your skin and give you a much worse injury, whereas the natural fibers will burn. And so I have this nice canvas apron, I have a cotton t-shirt and cotton leggings on. I'm all set. So my solder setup, I use this little hand torch. I don't have a gas torch at the moment, but this is great because all I need is this little cookie sheet, and it protects my bench. I have this little solderite pad. I have a few charcoal blocks. I have like, 6 of these third hands because they're so handy. And all my other little accessories and my flux, which is what's going to keep my metal clean while I solder so that my solder seams work. So first off, what I want to do is to choose the gemstone I'm working with, and also determine the style of band I want to make and what kind of wire, or maybe I'm using sheet. Mostly I've been doing wire bands. I start with wire, either a 10 gauge. I've done quite a few with a 10 gauge where I've manipulated it. So I'm gonna hold up jewelry again, but so this piece is tapered at the ends here where it meets. So it gives a slight variation. It's not extremely noticeable, but it's just that little detail that makes it more than just a piece of wire as a band. Just the smallest little detail can change a design and make it stand out from other ones. This one is that I'm working on right now. That's actually, I have the bezel, which I have the bezel without a back. What I've done is I've taken a jump ring, soldered it, and hammered it flat. And then I soldered the bezel strip to it. This is a good way to conserve metal. You also can see the light reflects better through the gem when you don't have a backing. So this one, yes.
Can you hold it up to the camera? I wanted the bevel, the soldered piece. Yeah, I was just trying to get a good. There we. Oh, I see. There's some depth to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I
Cool.
can show you the back too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just need the tiniest lip to hold that stone in place. You don't need a whole backing to keep it in there. And when you're setting stones, there's a huge variety of ways to set stones. And it's just about figuring out how to capture that stone. So it's not going to move around. It's not going to fall out. And you can get really creative. The bezel is a very classic, simple, sophisticated style. So this is the one I'm current. This is a custom order actually, and I don't know if you can see it very well, but this one I've actually done the opposite. So it's, once again, it's the 10 gauge silver, which is, it's hard to, like, if you don't work in gauges a lot, it's hard to translate what that means size-wise in relation to yourself, right? But it's 10 gauge is a pretty hefty wire size. But so the ends here where the bezel is going to sit, I've hammered those so they've spread out. They're kind of doing that. So this is going to be our last step. I'm going to, as far as the soldering, I'll attach that. And then I'll have to clean it and then I'll set the stone. But I do have a pendant with a bezel setting, and on that one you can see there is a back, a solid backing of sterling silver. This one is all ready to go. So I'll show you how, once you have a finished setting and you're ready to put the stone in, I'll show you how to do that with this piece. But for right now, let's do some soldering. I have another stone here. This one is a rose cut citrine. And I've cut this small strip of bezel. This is super thin, fine silver bezel. I am going to solder the ends of that together. And the first thing I want to do is to make sure that these ends are filed down flat. So I have this, can you see it? No. I just have a stool here with a piece of sandpaper on it, which is so much sweeter than you know if you've ever done metal smithing. But this flat surface with the sandpaper, I can just easily go like this, especially with tiny pieces. When you're metal smithing, you're working with such tiny pieces, it can get really frustrating. So any kind of trick that's gonna help you out feels like a miracle. So let's see, that side's a little uneven. So, and sterling's really soft. So I want to check it often because it will file away pretty quickly because of how soft it is. Okay, it's looking good. So I'm gonna set it up so I can solder it. I'm gonna move this camera just a little closer. So now I want to get my hand tools. I just have some chain nose pliers. It's nice to have a couple pair of those for different things. For right now, I just need one. And when you solder, the solder is not going to fill in any gaps at all. So you need to have the two ends that you want to join need to be touching without any space at all in between them. And so the trick to figuring that out, one of the easiest ways is to hold it up to the light. You don't want to see any light coming through. If you see light coming through, your joint is not going to work. So this looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and solder it. And I'm going to use my solderite pad here because I don't need it to get super hot. The charcoal pad, reflects the heat back up. This bezel's so thin, it's easy to melt. So I have 3 different types of solder. I have easy, medium, and hard. These are named for their melting points. Hard solder has the highest melting point, so I start with that. When I can use hard solder, I want to use hard solder so that the next step in my design, I can use something with a lower melting point that will not then melt my previous solder joint. I'm going to brush flux on there. The reason for that is that solder will not flow on dirty metal. The flux will prevent the metal from building up oxides. Which will help the solder flow. Okay, so I'm all set up. I'm gonna first pick up my solder so I don't have to worry about finding that later once I am ready for it. I think I got it. Oh, no, there it is. Okay, so now I want to get the metal nice and hot. There are a couple things I look for. This is gonna just heat up really quickly. It's ready. So I'm just gonna touch that solder. Oh. Okay, didn't work. Sometimes as you are heating metal up, it can move around, and that's what just happened. Usually you wouldn't do that, but this is so small it cools off really quickly. So So I'm not burning myself. So what I would do is I would just start over. And this is clean enough that I don't need to go put it in the pickle pot to start over again.
Can you show us what happened?
Oh, we did. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I mean, nothing happened. The solder flowed on one side. It didn't connect the two.
Oh, oh yeah.
So, so I'm just trying to see if I can get it back to where it's touching. But I think the solder flowed in a way where I can't do that without sanding it a little more. Okay.
Pamela,
Yeah.
can you move your camera? I don't know if anybody else is feeling this, but I can't see when you're doing what you're doing.
Let's see. It's kind of hard because it's a laptop and fitting it on the bench around all my supplies and tools, but that might be a little better. Is that better?
If you put something on, if you put that ring on there and hold still, I'd be able to see if, you know, what you're trying to solder. If you put that on there, that makes
yeah.
Yeah.
What about?
Is it getting lost on the white pad?
I'm getting lost on the white pad. Yes.
Yeah.
It looks
Oh,
like
that's a little bit better. Maybe the light was a little bright on the pad.
No, I just turned that light on.
Oh, you turned it on. Yeah.
I wonder, hold on, let me see about no. Huh. Yeah, yeah, the camera on this laptop is not that great, unfortunately.
That might be good. I think it's worth giving it another shot.
I could try to.
And we have a question in the chat box from Susan asking what solder is made out of.
Oh shoot, I should have brushed up on that. It's I think it's I forget the percentage, but it is silver, copper, and zinc. The solder that I use. There are different types of solder, but this is what is generally used in silver soldering. I also use it with brass. It's just, yeah, harder to hide the solder when you use it with brass. So I'm gonna attempt this once more. I think I've got a good enough seam here if I just sand a little again. Okay, looks good. Let's try that again. Um, can you hear the train?
Yes.
Okay, a little more flux. Oh yeah, that worked. Great. See, when it works, it's so quick. When it doesn't, and of course, when you're demoing it, it doesn't work the first time, right? So, okay, so I've got a successful bezel, but a very messy one. There's a lot of solder, a lot more solder than there needs to be on there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but you only need the tiniest amount of solder. But I put 2 pieces on there just so that we could get it soldered. So this bezel, when I measured it up to the stone, I made it a little too small intentionally, because if it's too big, I can't really do anything with it. But if it's too small, I can stretch it, because metal is malleable, and metal is especially malleable after you anneal it, which I essentially just annealed it by heating it up. When I was soldering it, the whole piece got hot enough to soften it up. And what's happening when you anneal the metal is you're disorganizing the crystalline structure of the metal. So those molecules are just kind of moving all over. And so they have like uneven space in between each other, which makes it softer, more malleable. When as you work with metal, as you move it around, whether you're hammering it or just bending it back and forth, those molecules line up in a really organized way where there's very little space in between them, and the metal gets harder and harder and eventually gets brittle and will break. So metalsmiths often have to go back to the torch, heat their metal up, and then every time you heat it up, you need to clean it before you work with it again. So it's quite a process. So anyway, I can stretch this bezel by putting it on my chain nose pliers and just pulling them, but I'm gently pulling them because it will stretch really easily, and I don't want to overdo it. So, and also silver is much softer than brass. Just as a note, in case you're curious about that stuff. So it's still too small. So I would just keep going back and forth, stretching it, checking the size to the stone, seeing if I can push it down flat, which I still can't. But I'm curious. Okay, so you get the idea of that process. So I'm gonna just skip over that to save some time. So once once I got it pushed over the stone, I would have the shape of the stone in this bezel, right? Once I push it over it, it's going to be shaped exactly to the shape of the stone. Once I have that, I'm going to back the bezel. So I would put it on my bezel here, and then set it up to solder it, which I really want to do that, but I'm afraid we're going to run out of time. Well, let me just see if I can stretch it a little. Do you all want me to go through this whole process, or I also have the already prepared bezel that's ready to be attached to a band, so I can move on to that? What do you all think? We have 20 more minutes.
I vote for you deciding.
But I want to please the people. Well, let me just see how difficult this bezel is going to be. Oh, I have to find a way to plug in my computer. It's gonna die. Hold on.
That's funny, Pamela. I just sent Rob to go get the cord because I have 5% left.
Oh, here comes Rob. I see him back there. Hello, Rob. So,
So I'm gonna skip that, and we're going to pretend that I soldered the bezel onto the back. Like I said, the process of making a whole ring is going to take quite a bit longer than an hour. So what we're going to do now, if I can find it, when I scooted my computer over, I messed up all my materials. Aha. Okay. So here's the band and the bezel that I showed to you earlier. And so I'm going to solder those together, and I'm going to do my best not to melt any of this metal because I've spent hours prepping these two tiny pieces. So soldering, when you saw the solder I just did, right, it was so quick, but setting up is what takes time. It's all about the setup when you're soldering. So what I'm going to do, I'm not sure if this is going to work. I always have to kind of do this little groove I have in here. But I think I can get it to work with a third hand.
The camera's not pointing down on your tray very much. Yeah, there we go. That's great.
Thanks,
Super.
Stacy. I'll try to get it closer. Okay.
And now I know why it's called a third hand.
Yes. And now for a fourth hand. So the bezel, right, is really thin, and I've got this 10 gauge band, which is thick. The band is going to heat up slower than this. For the solder to flow on both pieces, they need to be of equal heat. So part of the setup is figuring out how to control the rate of heat for both pieces. This bottom piece is on a block of charcoal. Charcoal will reflect heat, so it will help to heat this piece faster. But this third hand is a heat sink. So that third hand is going to be stealing some of the heat from this side. So I have to kind of keep that in mind when I'm doing this. And I'm still kind of figuring out the best ways to heat these or solder these rings. Sometimes it works out really well. Sometimes it's just, it takes multiple tries. Hopefully today it's one of the easy times, right? So I need to get this to sit flat, which means I need this a little bit higher. I think actually what I need. Okay, I think this should work once I get it just right. So I'm gonna go ahead and put flux on the parts where I need joined.
Is there a stone in that bezel right now? There's
No.
not, is there?
There is not.
Yeah, okay.
No, I can't, you can't do it that way.
Oh.
Most stones can't withstand that heat. Let's see, this is not. This is the fun part. so close. No. All right, I think we're good. Okay, so when I did that second soldering, when I soldered the bezel to the back, I used medium solder. So now I'm going to use easy solder because it's got a lower melting point than the medium and the hard solder. And I'm going to cut a few pieces because these are tiny pieces of solder and it's so easy to lose them. And I just don't want to have to stop the torch, cut more solder, and start again. So I'm cutting more than I actually need. So when I'm heating this up, I'm concentrating on that thicker piece below. And some of the heat from that even will transfer to the upper piece. And what I'm looking for is the color of the metal and then also the flux that I put on there starts to get really shiny and glassy when the metal is to temperature. The reason I don't put the solder on there before heating it up is that the flux tends to bubble up and the solder will jump around and go where I don't want it to go. So I have to wait to heat up the piece so that the solder will stick to it instead of jumping around and going wherever. So the thing about showing you this through the camera is it's something that's really hard to see unless you're really up close, and like I said, this camera isn't great. So okay, I think it works. Can't really tell on this side, but this side it definitely flowed. And it looks like it partially did at least over here. So there it is. And as you can see, possibly the metal's really dirty now from the oxides. It's actually copper that causes the oxides. So when you work with fine silver will stay beautiful and clean in fire. But once you introduce copper, you get the oxides. So once I put this in the pickle pot, if the pickle pot is pretty hot, it will be clean within a couple minutes. After that, I would go ahead and do all the polishing, like sanding it, making sure I've gotten rid of all the marks that my tools may have left in the silver, and getting a nice smooth surface all the way around. Then I would, depending on the finish I want, if I want a really nice burnished, shiny finish, I would put it in my tumbler with still shot for about an hour or two. And that work hardens the metal, but it also burnishes it, so it gives it a really nice high shine. If I wanted a kind of satin finish, I wouldn't do that. But then once I finish all of that, that's when I put the stone in and close the bezel up around it. So this is just about ready. However, it needs a little more work before we can do that, which is why I have this other piece all set up so I can show you how to put the stone in once you do all that hard work. I think I left my burnisher out on in the other room, so I'm gonna go grab that really quickly. I'll be right back.
And for your halftime entertainment.
What am I missing out on?
Oh, I was just joking about being the halftime entertainment. Actually, it's not halftime. It's almost the end of time. It's
Oh.
2:59, but we'll finish.
Oh wow. I wasn't sure how long this would take, as I haven't done it before. So yeah. Okay. So this is the pendant that I showed you, and I've got this lovely gray moonstone cabochon that I'm going to set in that. It's got a really nice snug fit. But obviously it's going to fall out if I don't do something about that. This is a stone setting tool. It's called a burnisher. It's a smooth steel tool. So when I'm pushing the bezel towards the stone, it's also burnishing the metal. So what I'm going to do, let's see if I can, this camera. So I'm going to push the metal in on that side, and then I'm going to go to the opposite side and push the metal in. So I'm gonna go to the four opposing sides, right? And this will help me to avoid, sorry, I keep getting out of the camera. It's going to help me avoid any crimping that might happen as I'm pushing the metal along into the stone. The crimping often happens in corners, but I have learned that, the other thing when you're metalsmithing, you need to be comfortable so you don't hurt your body. So I'm trying to keep in the camera, but also not hurt myself. So what was I saying? Oh, the corners. So the trick with the corners is that on the corner, you just file off with a square file or a triangular file, like a tiny one. I have these tiny, they're called finger files. This is a whole set of them. So you take one of those and you remove some of the metal in the corner, and that way the metal meets up as you push it in.
Susan asked in the chat if how you do create a satin finish on a piece of silver.
Oh, well, I would sand it. I mean, there are often file marks after I finished the design. So I would get those file marks out by starting with more aggressive sandpaper, moving to a finer grit. And then you kind of have that satin finish, which you can accentuate with a brass brush. I always have the worst time trying to say brass brush. I get like, it's a tongue twister for me. So yeah, you can use just like one and do it by hand, or there are brass wheels, that attachments for the flex shaft that I use. So you can do it with a rotary tool as well. So this, I just keep going around and around until I've evenly got the stone in there. It's still moving around a little bit. I can feel it. It's this design is also tricky because, as you see, it's harder to get at that part of the bezel. But it's coming together. I just need to continue to burnish it a little bit, and then it'll be smoothed out and ready to go. And this one I actually haven't tumbled yet, and I'm going to because I have tumbled moonstone before, and the still shot doesn't break it. So I know I can withstand the tumbling with the stone in it. With the rose cut stones, I'm not so sure about those. So those ones I'm tumbling the pieces before I put the stone in, and then putting the stone in. But yeah, so setting a stone.
Bravo.
That is so cool. I love that piece.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Will it go up on your Etsy site?
I'm not using Etsy anymore, but it will go up on my website at some point. Or if we ever have markets again, I'll show it in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Pamela? Feel free to turn off your microphone and chime in.
I do, as a matter of fact. That's a nifty little torch. What is
Oh.
Is that propane?
No, it's butane.
Butane.
It's yeah, it's these are, so this one is called a micro torch.
Okay.
I have 6 or 7 of these. Wow. Because I teach, you know, I teach that metalsmithing class, and I bring torches so that everyone can use them. And these are sometimes, you know, they're one of those items that some company manufactures, and then different brands buy it and slap their own brand on it. But I've seen this torch sold as different things, but it's the exact same torch. Harbor Freight has them for $15, but I've seen them for like $30 to $40 at other places with different brand names.
Okay.
So yeah.
Is it different from a creme brulee torch, or is it the same?
It's the same. Yeah, I think they have these under a different, like a chef something at Bed Bath & Beyond, and I think they're like $30 there, but it's the same torch. So, yeah.
So is butane hotter or not as hot as propane? You know?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
My energy background, I think propane is a lower heat content. So I think butane's higher heat. I think it's hotter. That's my now aging recollection of the energy content of fossil fuels.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
um,
So is it, you buy a canister when you've used up the fuel
Yeah,
to put in? Which,
yeah. Got canister right here.
cool.
well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us in our presentation. Thank you, Pamela. That was so cool. It's great to see your space.
Thanks for
Um,
to everyone for coming.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's up to 14 people on the call for a while, so different people had to check out at 3. We lost a couple.
Uh-huh.
Well, take care, everybody. We'll end the call
Yeah.
and we'll see
Thank
you next.
you.
Oh, hey, Pamela, do you know what our next Zoom call is?
Oh, I'm trying, I need to set something up with Jen and oh, Candace is doing the tax portion, she did the bookkeeping last week. She's doing taxes for small businesses.
On Friday? Is that
The
Friday?
19th.
Oh, Friday the 19th.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks from this coming Friday. And I was thinking I might do another one if anyone's interested. I don't know what I would do, but I could just do a few things like I could show some texturing with the rolling mill. That's kind of fun. And I don't know if you all have any ideas or suggestions.
I have a little clip on camera down at our view desk on the conference rolling cart, so we could try and see if it'll help you if
Yeah,
you're a better
that would be great.
dot to something to think about. We'll try that. Hey, Mike, I see Mike now. All right. Any last words? Take care, everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks.
Pamela.
Nice to see you all.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.